Well, one easy way to start is to go around the screen and have everybody introduce themselves, because this is the first meeting of this committee, right?
That's right.
Martha?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you want to start, Myron?
Sure, I'll
Yeah.
be happy to get the ball rolling. Try to keep it brief. I'm Myron Pitts. I'm the opinion editor in with the Fayetteville Observer. Been with this outfit 26 years now, so I kind of like
Wow.
it. Um, I guess I'll say my interest in involvement in this committee's work and this group's work is that I've covered different aspects of elections for many years. What I've seen, I think we, from what I've seen, just from my little narrow view in Cumberland County, is that we have a good system, but there's no perfect system, and so I see the role of this group is seeing where and if change is needed. So, and I look forward to working with everybody.
Just pass it off to somebody else, Myron.
Mary Ellen, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I don't answer to Mary Myron. It's strictly Mary Ellen. So I didn't know who you were talking to. I'm looking.
You know, I should know better. We have a daughter named Helen Ann.
Okay. Let's see. I guess, my interest in elections goes way back to the 1970s when my first husband was a Louisiana senator. And a second husband brought me to North Carolina. When I worked, I was a media specialist, do a lot of research, that type of thing. And I just spent 17 months as the president of the League of Women Voters of the Piedmont Triad. And that's how I first got involved with the Carter Center.
Talk to Dutch. You need to talk.
My area of interest with the League has been fair elections, which of course encompasses all of this. And our voter services work is anything that wouldn't be under fair elections. So this is kind of right up my alley, and I do have quite a bit of interest in, I guess, the misinformation and disinformation right now that surrounds all of this is particularly distressing to me. And I think that's why I want to be involved, to see if I can find a way to get accurate information to people. And hopefully they will believe it, because it seems to be reversed at the moment.
Yeah.
What is inaccurate seems to be acceptable, and what
Sure.
is accurate seems to be fake. So I don't understand how that's working, but I'd like to do what I can to help.
Yeah.
And I'm in Greensboro, incidentally.
How about you next, Ted?
My name's Ted Stilley. I'm in Elkin in Surrey County. My family recently moved back to North Carolina, and we moved from a state that in the last 10 years has gone through a pretty significant shift in voting. As Jennifer referred to, we lived in Alaska before moving to North Carolina, and we did embrace ranked choice voting, and I feel like that was a formative experience for me, both as a voter and a part of the community. So I'm happy to be a part of this. I've lived in a lot of places around the country, and also voted as a military member. So I feel like I've kind of experienced the gambit as a user of the system. So this is certainly my first venture into kind of the more academic and how to fix it part of the equation.
Cool. Is it Tara or Tara?
Hi, thank you. Yes, it's Tara. My name's Tara Muller. I am a policy attorney at Disability Rights North Carolina. Our organization is the state's federally mandated protection and advocacy organization for people with disabilities. So we go across the state monitoring and making sure that people's rights are being met, and we advance the rights. We also have a voting team, and we are very involved in making sure that people with disabilities can vote in a private way, in an accessible way. So that includes absentee ballots, access at the polls, curbside voting, and then also that the accessible machines are working. You may be familiar with some of our litigation that has led to some changes in access for blind and low vision voters, and voting assistance available to people with disabilities. So we are really interested in this group and happy to be involved.
Okay, thank you. Tony.
Good afternoon, Tony Almeida. I'm in Salisbury. I'm retired from Duke Energy. Spent some time in state government, and my claim to fame is I know Susan Klutz, who also is in Salisbury. It's great. And I was also a lobbyist for 7 years for the North Carolina Research Campus in Kannapolis. So I'm on this group, and I'm on two of these groups. I don't know, Jennifer Roberts, if other people are, but I'm also on the election security group. I'm on here because my friend Michael Bitzer asked me to be, and have a high regard for him, and anxious to learn more. And you know, I hear a lot of junk about elections and election outcomes, and so I'm anxious to help set the record straight on that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Susan, your name was called a couple times now.
Oh, okay. I'm Susan Klutz, and I served 7 terms as mayor of Salisbury, and actually served with Myron's brother, who when I helped organize the Metropolitan Mayors Coalition, which is the mayors of the largest cities of North Carolina. At the time, Charlotte was the largest, and Salisbury was the smallest, and but we still had an equal voice. So I was on that for 10 years, and served with Pat McCrory, who, when he was elected governor, asked me to. I had finished my term, and he asked me to serve as on his cabinet as Secretary of Cultural Resources.
Okay.
And which I did, and in an unusual position, I was the only Democrat in a Republican administration. So I had a very interesting experience, to say the least. But I very much believe in bipartisanship, and I believe that you have to work with both parties, have to work together, which we did in the Metropolitan Mayors Coalition very successfully, and that's why I did it, and I enjoyed it my entire 4 years. And I served, by the way, on the governor's cabinet with Tony Almeida from Salisbury, who's also on this committee. He was head of economic development for the governor. So I've got 2 of my colleagues on here, and I'm actually serving on 3 different committees. So, and I'm enjoying it. I think it's something critically important in many ways, and I'm just looking forward to working with all of you to see what we can find out.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Brandon, what you got for us? You're muted.
Man, I appreciate that, Mr. Pitts. Yeah, my name is Brandon Rivers, regional director for an organization called You Can Vote, Charlotte native. But outside of You Can Vote, I do civic work. I've worked on campaigns, presidential campaigns, senatorial campaigns. I do panels, I do civic work, I do work inside the high schools, the detention centers. And that's pretty much it. I'm actually about to meet with a group of students in a few minutes to do some voter registration. So that's pretty much my thing, just voter education, empowerment, and voter education. So super glad to be here. Ms. Roberts is definitely, I work with Ms. Roberts a lot, so definitely excited to work with everybody on this call.
All right, let's keep Gen Z in the game. Excellent work. Yeah, you know, I never thought I'd be the type to say this, but you know, I'm past middle age now. But you called me Mr. Pitts. I'm gonna have to say Mr. Pitts is my father. Myron's fine. Let's go to Robert Wilson. Can't hear you, Robert. It doesn't show you're muted. Is it just me, or can y'all hear Robert?
Nope.
Yeah, in the meantime, let's go to Nadine Gibson.
I'm Nadine Gibson. I'm an assistant professor at UNCW. And I've been doing research on election administration for a little while now. And I'm also on the mail-in ballot committee. So we've had a couple meetings on that committee so far. So I'm excited to get working on voter access because, you know, the students at UNCW, like, they actually have a very hard time getting registered and voting. Polling places are not particularly accessible here. And there's a lot of confusion about, you know, how to, you know, get yourself to a voting booth and how to register. So I'm interested for multiple reasons.
Okay. Okay. Robert, are you good yet?
I just remembered, I talked to Robert earlier today and he said I think he's got some workmen in his house and it's
Gotcha.
not gonna be able to talk, but he can listen.
All right, cool. So let's go to you, Jennifer, and then we'll wrap up with the intros of Martha. I believe you got some program notes for us about what's going to be public and what's going to be private in our conversations. Okay, Jennifer.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Martha, I guess you can lay that out for them. So I'm Jennifer Roberts. I started working with the Carter Center in 2021. Before that, I was with the national nonprofit doing climate work and climate change solutions. And then before that, I was mayor. I served on the Metro Mayors Coalition. So thank you, Susan, for your work with that. It was great. And I was a county commissioner before that. And I've been working since 2021 with the Carter Center on supporting democracy in a bipartisan, cross-partisan manner, keeping our elections fair, safe, secure, and peaceful. And we want them to be boring again, right? But appreciate everybody being on this call. I'm one of the steering committee. I'm not the coach for this particular committee, but since I've been doing this longer than Martha, I'm helping along with Rachel to be the glue to hold it all together. And you can, I'm here to answer any questions. And I have to leave a little early too.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think Jennifer's great because she's also going to have the bigger picture among all the committees, I think.
Mhm.
So I'm Dr. Martha Croft. Most of you met me on October 9th, or at least saw me on October 9th. So I'm your coach. So that means I'm part of the steering committee on the commission for elections in North Carolina. And so I'm just around to be mostly, the connection between the other groups, but also to give you advice or find people to present information if you want, or research if you want. And so Nadine is great for that too. It turns out she's a really good scholar, and we are also lucky to have her on the committee. So the program notes. First, I'm just going to apologize because my computer is acting a little sticky today. So I'm going to turn off my video. But I have two program notes for you. I heard my voice is good. But so first, we decided as a steering committee, and I want to make sure everybody is okay with this, that while each of the committees were doing fact finding or just, getting to know each other kinds of sessions like this one, that we would record the meetings. We then, though, decided that if we start deliberating as a committee, then we're going to not record the committees. We want everyone to feel comfortable with being able to share what they feel and not have to worry about, I don't know, whatever political mess, is going on outside. So that's just really important to know that while we're doing fact finding, we will record them. And I think Myron is going to talk about this later, but we're also as a group trying to come together with some survey questions or things that we'd like to know about North Carolina voters and non-voters, as it were. So you'll be doing that later. So I'll pass it back to you, Myron, and any advice or whatever you guys want, I'll happily give.
Okay, thank you. And of course, this will apply to all our sessions, but in particular, this first session, this is our chance also to, if we have questions about anything, Don't shoot them to me, shoot them to Martha and Jennifer and the rest of the experts. I will help steer them in the right direction. So we come to, I guess, what we could call the main course of this meeting, and I'm gonna go against the dietitians and say we kind of need to eat fast because we only have an hour. Uh, so y'all take just maybe a minute or so, maybe about a minute to look over if you haven't had a chance to assess. These topics were put together mainly by Martha and Jennifer. I chose to really include the whole list because I want to give y'all a chance as committee members to at least lay eyes on some of the things we could talk about so we could narrow it down. I certainly don't have in my head a set number of topics we should pursue, but I could say, generally speaking, the kind of person I am, I'd rather pursue a smaller number of topics where we feel we either A, just as a committee, just need more information, or B, we see there's potential for change, or at least evaluating whether or not change is needed. So that's just me personally. So I'd rather do a smaller list, this achievable. We all have our big wish list, and I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about those things either. But let's take a look. I'll shut up. I'll get out of the way and hush just for a minute, and that's all I can promise. And then let's talk about what we think we want to focus on as a committee.
Let me jump in real quick.
Go ahead, Jim.
I put your list in the chat,
Mhm.
so folks should have access. And the other thing to think about, and our polling questions might help with this, but issues that are a particular concern to voters, where there is particular misinformation, disinformation, confusion, are always good ones to think about as well. So if there's something that's well established, nobody has, it's not controversial, and you're looking to leave topics off, that would probably be a good one to leave off if it's not. Yeah,
Sure.
just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thank you.
Also, so when we were going through this before the meeting too, Jennifer pointed out in her big picture way, some of these do sort of overlap with other committees, so we might consider
That's helpful.
leaving them off. So I'll just.
All right. So I didn't have a specific format or structure to follow. I want this to be kind of more of a conversation. I'm going to take co-moderator privilege and lead off the discussion if y'all are okay with that. One of the things that's and one of the reasons I was interested in the whole group is voter access, that there are as few impediments as possible between people, while also keeping elections secure, but few impediments as possible between people and their constitutional right to vote. So one thing that I would like to gather more information on and see where North Carolina is on felon voting. Someone help me with the current, and it might be you, Martha and Jennifer, with a current overview of what rights do justice involved people have when it comes to their voting. And well, let me phrase it this way. Tell me if I'm wrong. My belief is that if they are off probation, they've done their sentence, off probation and parole, they have their voting right restored. So if that's not correct, or someone tell me the process there.
So that's correct. If they've completed their sentence, they are people who are felons can re-register to vote.
Okay. So that's one issue, and I can certainly say that I could see this being folded into voter education. we may go that route because, and this is kind of personal to me because the most number of calls I've ever received from random people about the voting process was 2008. And they were exclusively, I'm just telling it like it is, there were all the calls were from African American men who had been just as involved, very young men in many cases. And their question to me was very simple: can I vote? I have this felony, can I vote? So I think there is an area for information and voter education there. So that's my piece. Who else? Who wants to speak?
Well, let me just throw this out. There's
Go ahead.
actually some really cool research looking at the notifications they give to people as they leave prison, and whether or not those notifications are effective in, encouraging people or having them vote. It's just that they give them a lot of information from what I understand. So I have a couple of ideas of people you could talk to. If you're
Okay, sure. That'd be great. Yeah. Okay.
So
Who's next? I'm sorry, Martha. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No.
Okay.
Go to next. Whoever's next.
I can add one more quick thing to that, and that is that a lot of people who are in quote unquote jail are actually not convicted. They are waiting a trial and they can still vote from jail. A lot of folks don't know that. So
Right.
that's,
Actually, Jennifer, it's funny you say that, and I should forward that to everybody, but the Ash Center at Harvard University just emailed a report on this, on whether or not people in jail were voting or not. So I'm going to write myself a note if and people in jail, their research. So.
Okay. Who's next?
Myron and Rachel, may I ask just a structured question here so
Sure.
that I'm not sitting on my hands? I've been taking minutes for us. Rachel Capon, can you just confirm for me whether you need me to take minutes or whether you're taking them?
Yeah, you don't have to take them. I will follow up with the minutes and all the notes at the end, as well as the recording. So I've got that covered. If you want to just listen, you're free to.
I appreciate that. I will.
And thank you, Ted, because that was something I meant to mention. So appreciate it. All right, who's next? Yes, Mary Ellen.
I'm wondering if one of the issues that we had here in Guilford County, I know it falls under voter access. I'm not certain how widespread it is in the state, but we had an issue with the Board of Elections setting the voting places, the precincts, and they were eliminating certain of the ones that affected students, particularly no voting places on college campuses, certain areas of town. And I'm wondering if this happened in other areas, and I'm wondering if what actions people took, because what we did here was we did a concerted letter writing campaign to the State Board of Elections, and we were able to reinstate all of these places. So we do have voter access at A&T, we have voter access at UNCG, we have voter accesses in various areas of the city that it was going to be removed. And I'm wondering, sorry about that, I'm wondering if it's possible that this has happened elsewhere, and whether or not people realize that they could contact the Board of Elections on the state level, because there's a hearing when the Democrats and the Republicans do not agree at the local level. So I don't know if that's worth investigating or not.
My personal opinion is I think so, and I'm very interested in because it kind of goes with what Nadine was talking about earlier. The barriers to college students, because there's probably some that are very individual to certain campuses, and then there's probably some that affects them campus wide. What do you think about all that, Nadine?
Yeah, I mean, at UNCW, we had a chancellor who essentially like vetoed a polling place on campus because it would cause too much traffic, right? But there's a big street that I guess if you looked at a map, you would say, oh, there's a polling place across the street. However, this street is like totally inaccessible by anyone by foot. Like you cannot cross this street. It's a major, like, I think there's like 8 lanes. Like no one's gonna cross that street to go to a polling place, even if it is just across the street. So I don't know if, you know, what's been going on in other counties, but I just know that students, like even if they do have a polling place in the vicinity of campus, it's not always accessible to college students. But I also wanted to put out like the language translations. So my husband is primarily a Spanish speaker, and that population is emerging in North Carolina. And so if it's not a major issue right now at polling places, you know, there's going to be many Spanish speaking folks who come to polling places who might have very low English speaking skills that, you know, I can't think of that many resources even in New Hanover County targeted at people who don't speak English. So I can see that being like, we really should consider, you know, making some proposals for language translations beyond even what the Voting Rights Act requires. You know, there's more and more people coming to North Carolina from a variety of backgrounds. You know, English is not the United States official language, so that shouldn't be a requirement for voting.
Tara, I see your, thank you, Nadine. Tara, I see your hand raised there.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree with everything that's been said. This is such an important list, and you know, it's hard to prioritize when you've got all these important issues. Just a plug for the disability. I just wanted to, so you all know the issues that we see and we've seen in prior elections that we focus on is people, first of all, not understanding their rights. A lot of polling places, a lot of the workers don't understand that they're not allowed to ask about the disability type. They're not allowed to question somebody's disability. They're not allowed to question why somebody has an assistant. We've run into problems. You know, we're very concerned this cycle, especially about the new laws that are in place that allow people who are living in facilities to have access to assistance to help them with the ballots, because that's a new law. And up until recently, people who work in facilities are not allowed to help the people. So if you live like in a nursing home or an adult care home, assisted living, you were not allowed to have a helper. Now you are. So those types of issues, we've seen a lot of people turned away, for example, because they come like in a van, you know, accusations that there's, you know, improper kind of voter trolling or people, you know, being unduly influenced. So poll workers trying to question people with disabilities, saying, do you really even know who you're voting for? You know, or, you know, you shouldn't be voting if you don't know who you're voting for, that kind of thing. But I also wanted to say that there's a lot of intersectionality here for our issues with a lot of the other things on the list that I see there. The felons, for example, justice involved folks tend to overlap a lot, people with disabilities. And, you know, education, access to the, you know, a lot of these overlap. So I just wanted to put that in there. It may make it easier for us to break it down if we can kind of see some overlap here. Voter qualifications and notification of change in precincts is also important to the disabled population, because they do tend to be lower income in general and change precincts quite frequently. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Martha, did I see your hand raised earlier?
Well, yeah, because I'm just curious if you guys are, if this new observer law, so I guess it's the new law this summer made it easier for observers to come to the polls. And I can imagine, especially if you have someone that's helping you, that like someone who doesn't really understand the laws might very well end up harassing people even more. And this is beyond like, you know, maybe lack of poll worker education. It's
Yeah, it's also
fee
grounds for
schedule.
potential misinformation to
Mhm.
be passed. Like if an observer may know the language, Spanish or
that too,
whatever,
yeah.
and can talk to the voter, but is not actually with, the elections board, that could be a mess. Sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
Oh, no, I think that's a great point. What I was going to say is, what Martha is mentioning, changes in a lot of laws that have happened. We are actually going to do a webinar with Paul Cox, who is the general counsel for the State Board of Elections. I think we've scheduled it for February 13th. We'll get that to you. Rachel's going to send out a link and all that. If you can't listen when he's actually giving it live, we will record it. And so that's going to summarize. There were several legislative bills that went through regarding elections. One has been halted, one went through, a couple more under appeal. So he's got a great summary of all that's changed that every committee should hear. So I just want to let you know that's coming.
Cool, good. All right, who else? What other things are on our minds? Just looking in the chat and make sure I didn't miss anything there.
I'll add a thought that strikes me listening to you all speak about these topics that are listed here, and then also your comment to start, Myron, about just how much ground there is to cover and focusing our time and energy. Maybe one frame to make decisions about which of these topics deserve the most attention, and then the most messaging to educate North Carolinians might be some sort of spectrum. That is to say, which of these topics affect or potentially affect the largest number of voters who are not currently accessing the polls, and then at the other corner of that spectrum might be maybe a smaller group of people, but whose access is the most limited. So people who might not be from a large demographic, but the barriers for accessing the polls are the greatest. And that might help make some decisions for us about which of these deserve our attention. I don't know where or how we would draw any statistics to say, there are 300,000 voters in the, 300,000 college voters or whatever that are not making it to the polls that we should expect there would be. But that might be a way to think about it.
Okay. Good reminder there in the chat from Jennifer. Also be thinking of if there's polling questions that we might have that could assist us in our work. Let's see, who else? Anyone else want to weigh in before we get to the nitty gritty of sort of combining and narrowing down topics here? Now, I know everybody has ideas because you showed up at a meeting about voter access at 4:00. Could be anywhere in the world. So y'all are diehards, and I appreciate it. That means we're gonna do some good work. So anyone else want to weigh in?
Well, I wonder if we shouldn't make a statement on the Electronic Registration Information Center. So last year, a lot of Republican states started pulling it. First, it's a consortium of states. It was an organization that was created by scholarly and collaboration, and some of the research was funded by the Pew Center. And so this is one of the big things that the Pew Center did when they were trying to make some improvements in elections after the 2000 election. So this is an organization that allows states to share voter registration information. And they are actually using some pretty advanced techniques to try and do voter matches to see if people are registered in more than one state. So a lot of Republicans now, of course, part of what they do or what they've been trying to do is also get people registered who weren't registered to vote. And apparently there were a lot of states that were very unhappy that this organization would tell them who to register to vote, even though all the states had a say. So there were a number of Republican states that were pulling out of it. North Carolina had just decided to be in it. I'm not sure where they are now with this national organization. But it is I mean, there was a lot of scholarly attention paid to data matching to make sure that we weren't just, you know, taking people off the voter rolls willy-nilly just because we thought, you know, Dan Smith was registered to vote in both North Carolina and South Carolina. And so I don't know if we shouldn't, you know, this is up to you guys, of course, but I kind of think this is something that we might want to think about.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely, in my view, I mean, anything that could literally affect whether or not someone can cast their ballot, and this could affect a lot of folks, or are aware of their rights as a voter, I think is something that's important to consider. So, so let's move forward just a little bit.
I
Now,
think Ellen has a question.
yeah, go ahead, Martha. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mary Ellen, go ahead.
Sorry.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that if I'm not mistaken, North Carolina pulled out of ERIC unless something happened at the last minute. I know we were working on that at one point earlier this summer, and they were pulling out, which is really, it just doesn't make any sense at all. But I think that is the case, although, you know, something could have changed after I worked on it, but I think that
Sure
you're
what
out.
they were with it. Thank you, Mary Ellen. So that one I hadn't followed as closely. I just knew that it was going on. So thank you.
Well, things move fast in terms of voting and so forth. Okay, so one thing I'm hearing that in terms of the overlapping of topics is voter education. So I think that's an area we definitely want to look at, because that kind of overlaps everything we've talked about previously. So I would put forward that one. I also like, I think it'd be great. I mean, everything we talked about has been super important, but I'm thinking about what Ted was saying about the most number of voters affected, or voters who, just could have their options very limited. And so the disability, the access for disabled people, I think should definitely be something that we look at. And for the blind and visually impaired, because with it's going to be, it's a presidential, it's going to be busy at the polls. And with the new observer law, we got some new actors involved. So the potential for shenanigans is going to be up, so I think that's something that would definitely be good to look at. Does anyone want to make a case for some of the other things we talked about in terms of a topic we are definitely going to pursue further? And my personal view is, is that what we've talked about is a good set of topics. So, if the group agrees and, we can work on how to organize everything. I think that's one of our challenges, is how to organize these into separate topics. I'm good with what we've talked about so far, because it's not a huge list. And it's a list that gets to very real concerns that different committee members have.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's what I was going to say. I think the things that people mentioned: felon voting, college student voting, low English proficiency voters, language issues, disability access, and ERIC. I mean, that sounds like it's doable. You could, study one of these a month or so and still have some extra time.
Sure. Brandon has a question. What's up? Brandon, did you have a question?
Yeah. I was just sort of doing a little bit of feedback about the voting in the detention centers.
Okay.
I do work inside the detention centers.
Sure.
even though Sheriff McFadden is an elected official, he allows us to come inside the detention center and get people registered to vote. A lot of times it can be challenging because first is just making sure they're able to get them registered, because 90% of the facility are just being held there because they can't make bond. So we're able to go inside the detention center. We're able to get them registered to vote. But a lot of times the issue is just out after once we get them registered, you know, we do come back, we do provide nonpartisan voting guides, because they don't have the access to see who's actually running for office, or they're not able to see the access of, you know, what issue that really stand for them. So we give them those, let them have those for a few weeks, and then we come back and we're able to provide absentee ballots. But the biggest thing is the mailing and the stamps, right? A lot of those inside the detention centers don't have the money to buy the stamps, or don't want to use the money to provide the stamps. So luckily our organization, we're able to provide free stamps to get them out to vote. But that voter access is sort of tedious, right? Because first you have to get them registered at the detention center. They have to mail it back. So it's a tedious process. And I think in Mecklenburg County, we have over about 12 to 1,500 people inside that facility. And I think, I think that's just, that voter access is just something that a lot of people don't speak about. I know that voting rights for those who are convicted of a felony on probation and parole is denied. But, you know, throughout the state of North Carolina, there's, I mean, just 1,200 just in Mecklenburg County. Just think about how many people throughout the state are in, we have 100 counties that are inside these detention centers that just sort of don't really have the access to vote. So I think that's something we want to definitely
Certainly
take a sight on as well.
Certainly. Tara?
I agree with all that. And I wanted to add that a lot of those people that are in detention centers are also waiting for competency hearings. So they may or may not even have, have been convicted. They're just waiting for a determination that they're competent. So they have mental illness or an intellectual disability, other things like that. So again, an intersectionality issue I wanted to add in there.
Okay. All right. Thank y'all. Okay, team, help me organize these, what we've talked about, into specific topics. Voter education is one. Nadine, you did a good job of running everything down. Would you care to give us a rerun?
Of me?
Yes.
Oh,
Voter
first,
education. Yeah.
Oh, but so I think points I made were like the college student access. And then like I think the limited English proficient
That's the one,
population.
yeah.
But and I feel like that actually goes pretty hand in hand with disabled voter access, because I think they would largely require a lot of the same resources, right? Like accessible voting machines.
Right.
And, variety of different types of information. So I feel like those things would go hand in hand. I've been writing a list here.
Okay.
But I guess we also mentioned like maybe just like polling place locations and I know for colleges that has been an issue. There was a whole thing in App State about polling locations on campus there, but that's like a bigger discussion about where polling places are located. And I can say here in Wilmington at early vote, there was one early voting center for New Hanover County, and that was at the senior center, which was fine, but I don't know why they couldn't have put a early voting location at UNCW.
Right, where the students actually are. Yeah.
There's no buses. Also, like access for buses and public transportation, I would say that goes probably with like polling place location. And I think that's probably a big factor for a lot of people about whether there's public transportation to polling places. I know there wasn't a bus from campus to the polling place.
Right.
There wasn't. So how are the students supposed to vote early? I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Mary Ellen, what you got for us?
When I'm looking at this, I see it all falling under voter education. But what my question is, do we want to look at what the existing situations are to educate, or do we want to see where people are not knowing, I'm not certain which direction we need to come from. I mean, I know, a lot about what we do,
Right.
and I'm sure Brandon knows a lot also. Sorry about that. My phone won't stop ringing this afternoon. Brandon, I'm sure, knows a lot what his group does, but I'm not certain whether we need to figure out which groups are being marginalized because they don't have the information.
Mm-hmm.
We want to look at what information is available from the state,
Yeah.
or whether we want to look at what we can do to bring information. So I guess
Okay.
that's my question. Which
Okay.
focus do we want to use?
Yeah.
We have a civic education group. So that was the group that was spontaneously formed on October 9th. I think they felt that the steering committee should have had one. And I think
Okay.
they're going to be reaching out to people. And I'm wondering if maybe our group should be looking at how we're educating people. And maybe we could advance any suggestions over to them.
Yeah. Sure.
Or, I know, Mary Ellen, I know you have a lot of resources. We could advance any suggestions to your resources or any to Tara's resources. But we should be finding out how we are informing people, maybe. I don't
Okay.
know. Okay,
That
just
was my question,
not my-
do we want to look at it from that point of view? And I think that is a good way, because then we would know what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'd recommend working with that civic education committee because they're looking at bigger picture things
Okay.
like what's the budget for advertising when you have, primaries and voting days? What's the budget? How does that information get out to people? They're looking at that big picture.
Yeah.
You all are laser focused on the obstacles and the variety of ways that information has to get to people. So
Mhm.
yeah, you all should collaborate, but I think it's
Okay.
still valid to have both of you engaged in that.
Sure.
And I got to jump off, but
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate your help and everything. So yeah, so I believe it was you, Mary Ellen, who said that all of this kind of falls under voter education. So that specifically doesn't necessarily have to be just its own separate topic. It's going to overlap the bullet point items that we talked about. So after the meeting, I'll try to, I will get with Martha and Jennifer, and then we'll shape these into some specific topics that we can pursue. Martha, I have a question in terms of pouring through research or looking at research and so forth. Is that something we can divvy up? And, I don't want to give people who don't work for me assignments.
Oh, I'm happy to give assignments.
So explain to me how that information gathering process can work. Explain
Well,
to the
so
community.
I can help you by finding guest speakers. For example, the infrastructure administration and infrastructure committee is going to hear from someone about election violence against local election administrators in the morning, and about how they're feeling about it. I can find research and give you articles. I don't have any. I have some of my students have prepared portfolios of research, and I don't think I have any that are on any of these issues.
Sure.
But I can certainly find articles for you to look at or skim.
I can help with it. I have a lot.
Good. Okay.
Yes, I know she does. The other thing is too, we could get experts from the election board to come in and talk about, or, from the state, who could come in and say, hey, this is exactly what we're doing. But the good news is we have just a wealth of expertise on this committee.
Right here on this committee. I was very pleased to hear everybody's background.
I'd love to hear Tara and Brandon talk about their respective groups that they're serving, because I think I've already learned a little bit today myself. So I love it.
Same. So is there a question, fellow committee members, that we could have posed in a survey that would help us in our investigations here? Thinking of voter access, thinking of barriers to same. what could help us gather more information in terms of what voters are really thinking about this issue.
I think Robert had his hand up for a second.
Yeah, I did. I have mine is a little bit broader, and
Okay,
I'm
sure.
thinking in terms of, and the reason I say that is for the last year and a half, 2 years, there have been much discussion about the machines themselves. There may be pre-programmed to do some things like they've been hollering about. There have been folks that have been messing with voting machines. So my suggestion is that each county have a review of their voting machines 4 weeks out, 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, and a week out. And make sure that there has not been any AI or any other form of technical interference in terms of their machines. Because I think this is it's going to happen somewhere in this country where somebody's going to tamper with some machines. I guarantee it's going to happen because they have broadcast that's what they intend to do. Because they blame other people, but there's going to be some interference somewhere. And we need to be prepared in advance for that. Because if we don't, then everything else we do is going to be null and void anyway.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert. I mean, that's why I'm a print ballot guy. Go ahead, Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen has her hand up.
Well, I'm on that election security committee, and Tory Gross, Ted, I think you missed that meeting. I don't know if you saw the tape of it, but Tory Gross, I think that's his last name, addressed us. He's was with the State Board of Elections. Now he's head of cybersecurity for North Carolina. And he made it clear that the machines that are used everywhere in the state, you can't actually get into them remotely because they don't have internet access. There could be something done, if you can get to the actual machines, but it's not a possibility. But people don't seem to understand that in the state, that and then we have a paper ballot for every vote cast. So not only, told y'all my phone won't stop. Not only is there not remote access, but you have a backup that can be looked at. So that goes a long way to allaying fears, but I don't think the public understands that.
Hey, thank you, Mary Ellen. Tara, real quick, if disabled folks who need assistance voting, do they have electronic machines for them, or do they still use the paper ballots, or how does that work?
That's a great question. There are a number of ways. So yes, I mean, they can use the absentee ballots. They can use now, because of that lawsuit that I was telling you about, if you're blind or low vision, you can use an electronic portal from home. If they go into the polls, of course, they have access to the curbside voting. And if they go in, they can use the accessible machines. The problems they run into mostly with the accessible machines is that they're not turned on when they get there, because so few people use them. They're not turned on, or the poll workers don't know how to operate them. Don't know, So so to answer your question, there is no one way that people with disabilities are voting. Absentee is what we really focus a lot on, because so many folks choose to do absentee.
Okay, thank you. All right, in the interest of want to respect everyone's time, if the committee can't think of a question right now, just give some thought to it. I'll work on it. Work on a potential question. We may decide we don't need one, but I feel like there has to be a way a question we can frame that sort of lets us know about the barriers that are out there, recognizing they're different for different groups. So I'll be thinking of one or two questions. Y'all do the same, and if you do, just send them on. Rachel, if folks have like any information they want to send forward to the rest of the committee members, do they go through you basically? Send it to you
Yeah,
and Martha?
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
absolutely. If they want to pass it along, that would be great. Any questions that they have for polling, if you want to pass it along, that would be great. I'm compiling a list of everything, so
Okay.
that would be awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Let me check the agenda. Any final questions before we wrap it up here? Yes, Nadine.
I was just gonna type in the chat, but maybe it would be good to have someone who is an expert on the accessible voting equipment, talk to us about how the accessible voting works.
I
And
want that
I
as
know
well.
that
Yeah.
the ballot marking devices also are programmed to different languages, so that like would also help with the language translation. So maybe we could have more information about how all of that works.
Okay. I think that would be good too, if Martha, if you know someone.
Oh, Tara, do you know someone? I can find someone, but I bet you know someone too.
Okay. Okay.
I'm
Uh,
happy to look. I'm happy to look. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to look too. Why don't we put our heads together and, yeah. I think there's got to be someone at the state board who could talk to us about that,
Sure.
but that's a great point, Nadine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? I'll add a little note of humor. So I have a 11-year-old son and a 8-year-old. Wow, there's for a brief time there's a 4-year gap between them. 8-year-old daughter, and they all are my daughter in particular is very careful on what she will step into a Zoom meeting to inform me of. So you probably can't see it, but it basically says, "Can I have a Girl Scout cookie?" And then she has a little box that says yes or no, so I don't have to use words. I
You
told her
have
she
to
could.
vote.
Right.
Isn't
I'm gonna
it-
spoil the
isn't
plot. I
ballot
said she
though?
could have
That's the
the
question.
All right. Well, I didn't have anything else. I really appreciate y'all taking the time. I don't have to tell anyone here. This is very serious work, especially with everything that's going on. And I'm glad there are so many folks who are willing to step up and do this work. So I really appreciate it.
Myron, I do have to add something.
Go ahead, Susan.
I am staying with a 9-year-old granddaughter in Greensboro who has been watching this, and she says she wishes she could be on this board.
Oh, that's great.
Like
Raise
so
them up,
much.
train them up right.
Very interesting.
I love her.
That's great. All right, Martha, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Not right now, but if you guys have like questions you want to find out from the North Carolina public, please forward Rachel the questions.
Okay.
It'd be great.
Okay.
That would be great.
All right. Well, thank y'all. I enjoyed our quick hour. I felt like we got something done here. So, and that's good. It's always a good feeling. So,
Great job, Myron.
reclaim the rest of your evening, and y'all have a good one.
Great. Thank you.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
too.
Bye.